Hello everyone, thank you for being here. My name is Shannon and this is Lavender Sky. Today I'm working in my reading journal and I'll be updating some spreads for some books that I finished in April and May this year. As always, I'm working in my Archer and Olive 8x8 inch dot grid notebook. It's holding up really well so far. I used this for 2025 and now 2026. Let's dive right into it. I have made a trip to Officeworks to print out some book covers. I don't do this super frequently, so I do kind of keep a stack of, I do kind of like build up a stack of book covers that I need to print, and this was just from my most recent run. I'm adding in Vengeful and The Housemaid for some covers I did in my last video, and adding Ray Bradbury's Farenheight 451, the last spread here from last time. Flipping over the page then, we'll be updating some books that I read for April and May. My next reading journal video will be updating some books I finished in June. To start with though, a physical book that I read with my eyeballs called Remarkably Bright Creatures. It's by Shelby Van Pelt. This is actually the second book about an octopus that I've read for the second year in a row. Last year my book of the year was Mountain Under the Sea, and that was also a book about an octopus. It might not come as a surprise then that octopuses are my favourite animal. I think they're really neat. What are your favourite animals? Do you have one? Is it an octopus? I'd love to hear. Drop yours in the comments if you want to let me know. I guess to start with decorating this spread, I tried to draw a bit of inspiration from the book cover itself. It's this really vibrant yellow and vibrant pink, so I've grabbed some stuff in my stash, I guess. So I've grabbed some stuff in my stash that matches those colours. I've got this crepe paper here from a present or flowers. Anyway, it's just junk that I've kept because I thought it might come in handy, and you know what, it did. I've also got this pink card here that has like bubble kind of patterns on it. I thought that worked with an under the sea theme, even though it is pink. We're going with the flow here. And then lastly, I've got these like dot stickers. Some of them are more watercolored and ombre with the pink and yellow and blue and greens. I thought they could like represent bubbles, kind of. And then I've got the solid color dots. I have them there, but I don't end up using them. And lastly, I've got that little square of dot paper, again, trying to be inspired by a bubbly theme. But let me talk about the book. So a friend got me this book because they know I like octopuses. And yeah, other than that, I didn't really know much about it before going into it. Also, like, just very coincidentally, the time that I read this book was just before the movie of Remarkably Bright Creatures was released on Netflix. I didn't know that was happening when I read it, but I did watch the movie after I finished this book just to see how they brought these characters in this story to life. And yeah, I'm going to be one of those people that says that the book was way better than the movie. No shade on the movie though. I thought I thought it was fine. It was like a cozy movie. It was chill. But yeah, I just really enjoyed the book a lot. I really enjoyed the chapters that were written from the octopus's point of view. That kept me going through it very quickly. But about this story, it follows our two main characters. Tova is an elderly widow who is a cleaner at the local aquarium, and Marcellus is a giant Pacific octopus who is also elderly and coming to the end of his life in captivity at this same aquarium. Tova and Marcellus have quite a unique and fun relationship. They're friends, which I think is so cute. And Marcellus is a little bit mischievous. He's always trying to like escape his tank and make it back to the ocean. I guess the town is like built by the ocean. Like a small beachside town in North America was the vibes it was giving. Yeah, so that's the two main characters, and the story follows a bit of a mystery plot with regards to Tova's son Eric. He died about 30 years ago now, right after he had graduated high school, and the circumstances surrounding his death are a little bit of a mystery. No one's quite sure what happened. But this is where I guess the story gets really interesting, because Marcellus, being the intelligent sea creature that he is able to like put together a few pieces to understand what happened to this young man as he died. And yeah, he tries to communicate that to Tova, whom he really cares for and wants her to, I guess, have an answer to the biggest mystery and point of grief in her life. This was a really wonderful, cozy and fun story. It's probably a spoiler, so skip forward a couple of seconds if you don't want to hear this part, but I cried at the end when Tova releases Marcellus back into the ocean right at the end of his life, after she's realised that he is trying to escape back into his ocean home. I guess to wrap this story up, I gave it 4 stars. It was really good, it was really cozy, it was outside of what I typically read, probably because it was more of like a cozy, low stakes story. But yeah, I really liked it. It was a nice way to kind of like lead into winter in Australia, because I finished this towards the middle but end of April, so just coming up to Australian winter season. The next story that I dived into after the one about the octopus was a memoir. This is called Crying in H Mart by the author Michelle Zorner. I really loved listening to this audiobook because it was narrated by the author, and I think there's always something special when an author reads their own story. This story is of Michelle's experience of her relationship with her mother, with food and Korean food. Michelle writes really deeply and emotively about connecting with her culture and her mum through the medium of food. And this is gonna sound stupid, I realize now, but at the time it was a little somewhat surprising alignment from an author that I first experienced as the singer of Japanese Breakfast. Although, like I said, reflecting on it now, it shouldn't sound so surprising. That choice of band name is about food and culture and breakfast. Actually, let me just check if Michelle is Japanese or Korean. And where did I put my phone? It's in my pocket. Okay, thank you for that pause. Back to the story. Yes, her band is called Japanese Breakfast, but I've just double checked. She is American Korean. I just wanted to double check I was getting that correct. Yes, she is American Korean. Her band is Japanese Breakfast. Anyway, as I was saying, I should have expected that food and culture would be significant to her, because again, like, I first came across Michelle Zorner from her band Japanese Breakfast, and then this story has quite a strong relationship and theme with food as well. Anyway, apart from all of that, this memoir is sad. It's kind of recounting the time in her life where her mother dies a slow death of cancer, which cruelly gives Michelle time to grieve her loss whilst her mum is still alive. She writes of her experience in caring for her mum as her mum becomes incapable of caring for herself. I recognise that this story will hit differently for people who've had such a close experience to their loved ones passing away. I fortunately haven't had that specific experience in my life. But, you know, I don't have to have those experiences in order to feel empathy for someone else who's gone through something similar. However, I found this story such a lovely dedication, to their relationship, and it was an exploration of grief and loss, but also continuation of one's own life after experiencing such grief and loss, and how you can go through something so big and so life-changing and still go through life yourself. Anyway, I really enjoyed this book. I maybe it sounds funny, but I don't mind reading about grief and those harder themes. I think it's important to connect with and share those types of stories of the human experience. It's really special to be able to write something that connects with so many people, whether it is a book about octopuses or it's a book about losing a loved one over time. The decoration that I chose for this spread was definitely inspired by the colour of the book cover. I just tried to grab everything that was orange in my stationery set, and I also had this orange Gudetama washi tape. Gudetama is a character in like Japanese cartoon. He's an egg. So I've added him here. The colours fit quite well. I gave this story 4 out of 5 stars. Okay, my next book off the shelf after crying in H Mart was, oddly enough, very fun. Yeah, I don't know what I was expecting when I grabbed this book, but it kind of wasn't what I got, which is cool, I guess. So this story is called My Sister the Serial Killer. And yeah, My Sister the Serial Killer, how fun. I heard about this book from an Instagram reel of recommendations for good horror books, but I have to be honest, I didn't find this book too much of a horror. I did find it more suspenseful and thrilling. Would the sister, the serial killer, be found out? Would Corriday, the older sister, be blamed or made to be responsible for her little sister Aola's indiscretion? Yeah, I really enjoyed the relationship between Corriday and Aola as Corriday kind of like navigates her sister, the serial killer. We listened to this story from Corriday's perspective throughout, written as though it was hearing her inner dialogue, which I found really fun because that's how my own mind works. I have an inner dialogue and it's on 24/7. Aola is her younger and prettier sister, more adept at getting who and what she wants. But it also seems that Aola has a bit of a habit of killing her boyfriends. It was only ever in self-defense, or so she claims. But Corriday does eventually start to wonder if maybe her sister is a sociopath. Like, how does she do it? And does she enjoy killing her boyfriends, maybe? Corriday never really knows what motivates her sister, and because we're only hearing this story from Corriday's perspective, we, the reader, never really understand her sister's motives either. So throughout this story we come to learn that Corriday is a nurse, and because she's a nurse she's very good at cleaning and disinfecting spaces. So her sister kind of calls her when she's in a bit of a bind, and Corriday comes through and helps to kind of like hide the body and the evidence and the blood of these little murders that her sister suddenly finds herself in. We also see Corriday working at her day job at a local hospital where she's in love with one of the doctors at the hospital. But Aola comes to visit Corriday at work one day, and the doctor that she's in love with sees her sister Aola and kind of immediately falls in love with her because, as has been established, Aola is really pretty and really eye-catching to the men that see her, I guess. Corriday, though, really doesn't want this man to die because, like I said, she has a crush on him. So there is conflict and tension within this story throughout of like, what will Corriday do now that her sister is dating someone that she really cares about too? Also, there's more tension weaved throughout the book because Corriday doesn't have anyone that she can talk to about what's going on with her sister. And working at the hospital, she has a coma patient that she will just spend time with and confide in, under the kind of assumption that this coma patient isn't hearing what she's saying. He eventually wakes up from his coma though, very surprisingly, and he, again, very surprisingly, has a really good memory of everything that Corriday was saying to him whilst he was presumably unconscious and unable to hear. So again, more tension in this story, what will happen. You can see that I've kind of pulled a little bit from the book cover colours for inspiration here as well. I've included these like bits of fabric and this green pattern along the bottom to kind of represent Aola's interest in fashion and fashion clothing design. And I thought the kind of brown stained looking paper gave the impression of dried blood. So that's what that's doing there. Yeah, and I've used green as my pen to write down my thoughts on this one. So yeah, I gave this one another 4 stars, and I've categorized it not as a horror but as a thriller. Let me know if you do have any good horror or thriller book recommendations. I am finding this year that I'm really enjoying this genre, and yeah, I'm hoping to read more fun, thrilling stories in the second half of the year. Alright, continuing on with the horror theme that I found myself in for the second half of the month. The next book that I read here was a super short story by Shirley Jackson. This is called The Lottery. It's a 9-page short story. So when I say short, I mean micro story. I have read one of Shirley Jackson's books last year. What was it called? It's called We Have Always Lived in the Castle. Again, like marketed, I guess, as a horror, but I found it more suspenseful than scary. Maybe the horror genre is really hard to try and figure out. I don't know. Anyway, this one was, again, very, very suspenseful, a little bit scary, I guess, but not, again, maybe what I would call horror. I don't know. I'm having a really hard time, like, identifying horror themes. Anyway. However, I genuinely really loved this story. If you've got 10 minutes, find the PDF of this story online. I'll drop a link in the description of where I read it for free. Like I said, 9 pages, 10 minutes max. Amazing story. And when I say the story was gripping, I mean, like, for the full time, I don't think I blinked. I maybe knew what was going to happen from like the kind of first couple of lines, the setup of the story, but I just had to satisfy that kind of curiosity. For me, this really felt like a masterclass in suspense and intrigue and build-up, in storytelling and horror, all things that make good books great. And the fact that Shirley Jackson has managed to paint such a clear picture with just such limited brushstrokes, astounding. We loved it. The Lottery is an annual event in this world. In some cities it takes weeks, but in this small town of 300 or so residents, it takes less than 2 hours. The black box that holds this lottery is older than the oldest resident, Old Man Warner, who is 78 years old. And this isn't even the original box. The rituals surrounding this procedure itself and the lottery lore are old and forgotten. Some towns are even starting to abandon the lottery, and Old Man Warner says that these youngsters are wrong and they have no sense in them. As most older generations, I guess, do say when change comes from younger people. I really felt that Shirley Jackson built this world out whilst staying focused on this momentary event. She lays the device of what happens to the lottery winner at the end of the story, right at the start, but you don't know that. And I thought that that was perfect in building tension, because it plants this seed in the back of your brain that just takes root and suddenly becomes more and more and more clear until right at the end. And I felt like the end of this story left me feeling really breathless and wanting more, but I guess one of the things that is fantastic about this tiny story is that there isn't more that needs to be said. Adding more wouldn't make it a better story, if you know what I mean. Anyway, I gave this one 5 stars. I loved it. Is it stupid to say that it might be a really solid contender for Book of the Year? Could it even be considered a book? I'm gonna say yes. Anyway, the decorations that I've used for this spread were kind of on these 2 ticket kind of looking thingies that I've put at the bottom of the page, because the lottery winner is identified by the ticket holder with the black circle on it. And the cover of this book that I found is very black and white, so I've used all my black and white stationery here to kind of like pull from that theme. Like I said, do yourself a favor, check out the link in the description and just take 5 or 10 minutes of your day to read this story and tell me what you think. I would love to hear your thoughts on this as well. Again, like I said, trying to get into more horror. Maybe I'll read some more Shirley Jackson. I know that she has some other good books out there. I have already read We Have Always Lived in the Castle. I know she's written The Haunting of Hill House. I've seen that TV series a couple of times now and love it. Would love to read the original source material, so maybe I'll go back and read that at some point in the future. But yeah, let me know what your thoughts are on The Lottery if you have 5 minutes to read it. Okay, the last book that I read this month, I didn't love, which is kind of a disappointing way to end these setups. But you know, you win some and you lose some. The book here is called Maeve Fly. Again, this was another recommendation that I had from Instagram Reels. I think it was in the same post recommending My Sister the Serial Killer. So yeah, I guess I had higher expectations for this story, considering it was from like the same suggestion reel, or you know, suggestion pile or whatever, recommended reading pile. So let me tell you a little bit about the story first. So the book is called Maeve Fly. The story is about a young woman called Maeve who lives in LA. She has a job at Disneyland. I think it's never specifically named, but it is heavily alluded to that she plays the Ice Princess, also known as Elsa, in Disneyland, and her colleague who plays her Ice Princess's sister, assumedly Anna, is played by her best friend, or a woman who becomes her best friend, Kate. Then we come to know that Maeve has a darker side to her that she calls the wolf. The wolf is kind of like the violent side to her personality, I guess. But her grandmother, Tallulah, an old Hollywood starlet that she lives with, kind of gives her this advice that she has to hide the wolf and kind of play the monkey. So I guess that's how she names the two sides of her personalities, the wolf being the more sinister side and the monkey being the more like appeasing, charismatic side that kind of hides the darkness of her personality. Maeve eventually meets Gideon, her best friend Kate's brother, who comes to town. There's sexual tension and chemistry between them. There's a few spicy scenes in it. Actually, that's what I did want to say about this book. I felt that there was definitely one or two moments I specifically remember thinking, oh, this is just like 50 Shades of Grey but with death. And like, this is just sex scenes but with like literal violence in them instead of just I don't know, play violence of 50 Shades of Grey. Am I allowed to say that? Not to say that BDSM is violent, but this story definitely takes the BDSM element to it and adds actual sexual violence in it, as well as murder, yeah, just straight up killing people. But, you know, Gideon and Maeve find that really horny, which again kind of gave me that 50 Shades of Grey turned up a notch vibe to it. Anyway, I didn't really love it. Yeah, it kind of felt like I said, it felt like the fanfic of shit. It felt like fan fiction of 50 Shades of Grey meets American Psycho. Even this story, Maeve talks about American Psycho being like one of her favorite films, or like being inspired by this film a lot in her life, which kind of makes sense. I would have loved it if they went more Bonnie and Clyde and really went on killing sprees together, but the story doesn't play out that way, unfortunately, which is a bit of a bummer. But yeah, like I said, I didn't super duper enjoy this story. I probably should have DNF'd it, but I always struggle to DNF books because I feel like I want them to get better and I have to see if they get better, and this one for me did not get better, so 2 stars. Again, like I've talked about horror genre being a little hit and miss for me. I'm not really sure how to categorize horror. I would say that this one wasn't horror, this one was more explicit gore stuff, if that makes sense. yeah, so if you're into that, read it, let me know. If you've read this story before and you really loved it, I'd love to hear your thoughts and takes on that in the comments, like sound off. Give me your perspective. I am open to discussion about it. I'm not trying to change anyone's mind, I'm just kind of giving my opinions and thoughts and feelings about it, so I hope you appreciate that. So yeah, 2 stars. And the decorations that I'm doing here, I got this, again, this red kind of cellophane that I've used in the background. It has a shiny side and a matte side. I've used this shiny side here because I think it gives the impression of blood pretty well. Also, the like skinny washi tape that I've used is giving blood splatter too. It's like black and red spots with a little bit of gold in it. And then I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna go ham on this black and red and gold kind of theme, and I got out these kind of foiled gothic stickers that are on this tape, on this pet tape, and I've just used up the rest of what I had on that stretch of roll so that I could it was really silly. I just used what was on there because I'd used all the bigger stickers for something else. So I just wanted to use those smaller stickers so I could like just neatly cut that section of used tape off and have like yeah, a nice usable section to start with. And then finally, I've added this girl sticker from a similar kind of gold gilded washi tape because I do like to add character stickers when I'm doing my book reviews. I've said it before and I'll say it again, I do need to like do a little bit more research and find some good character stickers that I can use in my spreads. Since the last time I mentioned that though, I haven't done anything about it, so I maybe just need to do something, be proactive about it instead of just talking about it all the time. Now that we're done with setting up those book spreads, I wanted to go back and talk about the book giveaway that I mentioned in last month's video. So thank you to everyone who entered the draw to win a copy of Farenheight 451 physical book that I will order from a bookstore close and local to you and send it to you, because I believe in the power of owning physical media and having something that can't be taken away from you by, you know, a subscription ending or yeah, just a service provider deciding that you don't have access to something that you've previously paid for before. Anyway, so once again, thank you to everyone who entered that giveaway. It's my first ever giveaway on this channel, and yeah, I'm really happy to be able to do this. Congratulations to Hillary Cameron 6453. You are the winner. Yay! Thanks again to everyone who entered. So yeah, thank you so much for that. I hope you all enjoyed entering and participating in that giveaway, and yeah, it means a lot to me that you guys like my content. This isn't my full-time job. I have mentioned it before and many times that I'm a counsellor here in Australia, but reading and doing my book journal gives me such creative joy and energy. I really like the process of creating my reading spreads for myself. I love learning new skills of like filming, editing, and uploading them to YouTube. Yeah, it's a fun little side hobby, and I'm so glad to have all of you here along the way for that. Yay! So now we're done with the book reviews. Let's flip back to the start of my 2026 reading journal here and update all the statistics in my book log to start with at the front. So I'm adding, in order of reading them, Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. This was published in 2022. This was a physical book that I read with my eyeballs, so there is no narrator. And I read that between the 15th and the 21st of April. I've categorized it as a mystery and have given it 4 stars. The next book in my log was Crying in H Mart by the author Michelle Zauner, published in 2021, read by or narrated by the author, again, which I said was so special. I started this one on the 1st of May and finished it on the 9th. Categorized this genre as a memoir, and that was just over or just under 7.5 hours and 4 stars. The next book on my log is My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyakun Braithwaite, published in 2018, narrated by Weruche Okia. I started this on the 20th of May, and this was a really quick read for me. I finished it just 3 days later on the 23rd. It was only a short story, 4.5 hours, and rated that one 4 stars. On to Maeve Fly. The author here was CJ Lead, published in 2023, narrated by Sosie Bacon. I started this one on the 23rd of May and finished it a week later on the 30th. Categorized the genre as a horror. This was a little longer book. It was 1 minute under 8 hours, so 7 hours and 59 minutes. Given it 2 stars. And last book off the shelf this month was The Lottery by Shirley Jackson, published in 1948. No narrator because this was a kind of like an ebook. Like I said, it was a PDF that I read with my eyeballs. Finished this in 10 minutes one night on the 28th of May. I classed the genre as a horror. This was just 9 pages, like I've said over and over again, and I cannot encourage you enough to go and read this if you haven't. And I've given it 5 stars. Like I mentioned at the start of this video, I don't have a printer at home, so I just go off and like batch print my book covers once every couple of months, if I'm being honest, when I go into town to Officeworks. So I'm adding here some books from last month's reading journal update. We're adding Vengeful, we're adding The Housemaid, and we're adding Farenheight 451 by Ray Bradbury. That is updating last month. And then onto the ones that I finished this couple of months. Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt, Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner, and to be printed for next month's update will be My Sister the Serial Killer, Maeve, Fly, The Lottery. Okay, let's update my book tracker and series tracker. Nothing to add to series right now, so we're just going to update with those couple of books that I finished in April, which was sadly just 1 book, and in May I finished those other 4 books. There's actually also a few things to add to my branching out tree. So I'm going to be adding along the autobiography branch, Crying in H Mart, as this was a memoir. And then we're going to go for the first time into the gothic horror branch and add The Lottery by Shirley Jackson. Alrighty, onto the buzzword reading challenge, and let's see what I can add here. I've had this one written in for a little while, but again just needed to print off the actual book cover for it. So The Housemaid is going in occupations. I'm gonna be a little bit sneaky, but you know, it's my book log thingy and I'm gonna do what I want to. So this prompt here says keyboard keys, and this title here has Crying in H Mart, and H is a keyboard key. I know they're all technically keyboard keys, but H by itself is an individual keyboard key, so that's what I'm gonna add to fill this prompt with. Like I said, I'm just playing by my own rules here. And adding some updates to my A to Z author and title. So we've got The Lottery. I can also add author Shirley Jackson for S. Up there in O, I've got Anya Khan Braithwaite as the author of My Sister the Serial Killer, which I've added under M. And the author for M, I've got Michelle Zauner. Oh, and we are blessed by a visit from Jumi. Hello, girl. How are you? What are you up to? Let us have a bit of Jumi time together. Alright, bye Jumi! And moving on with the rest of my annual book pages, let's see what I can add to my book bingo. Okay, I had previously written Vicious could take up the prompt for N4, narrated by a man, but I'm gonna put this, I think, up in G3, which is finished a series, because Vengeful was the end of that 3-book series. Okay, and then O2 was finished in 1 day, so that was Farenheight 451. Go me! Okay, Crying in H Mart. This fulfills this prompt, a book rec from a friend. So that is going to go up here, yay, in the spot N1. Okay, I also had The Housemaid was a book that I saw someone read, which was one of the prompts in bingo, so let's uncover where that allocation goes. B2, perfect. And Remarkably Bright Creatures. You know what? This is definitely a book with a non-human main character, so that's going to live up here in G1. Okay, and I know I haven't printed the book cover for it yet, but read a short story. That is going to be the lottery. So I'm just going to mark in pencil B4 for the lottery when I print that one. And then the prompts that I have left are an author with my initials, a book about witches, a classic I've never read, a translated book, a book over 50 years old, a book with queer main characters, to hit my reading goal of 30, a 1-star read, a 5-star read, read a rom-com, book with an Indigenous main character, read a spicy book, listen to a 15-hour plus audiobook, read a book with 400 or more pages, read a book set during the holidays, and I still have to decide what I want to use for narrated by a man. I don't have any quotes that I want to add this time around, but my March book is going to be Farenheight 451, so that leaves me to choose from these 3 books as my Q1 finalist. So it's between Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, Yellowface and Farenheight 451. Out of those 3, I'm going to pick Yellowface to advance. And then it's really easy for April. I only read 1 book, so that's Remarkably Bright Creatures, needs to be printed and go up here for April. Out of the books I read in May, I'm going to add My Sister the Serial Killer to my May top read. And then once I've done June, I'll just have to do the same thing, pick my favourite out of those 3 to advance to the Q2 finalist. And that's it for my reading journal update this time around. Let's have a quick flip through. Okay, so you'll notice that just to make life easier, I've gone down and have added numbers along the sides of the book log so that I can kind of make sure that I'm matching up my number of books read with my book covers that I've printed with the book tracker that I colour in. So just to keep things easy for me, I'm making sure they're all numbered. And let's check out those book review spreads one last time. We've got Remarkably Bright Creatures. Crying in H Mart. I really loved just the whole kind of monochromatic spread for Crying in H Mart. It's very soothing for me to look at. I really liked using those ombre stickers for the bubbles. I think it gives the impression that I was wanting to give. I've left some space there for the book title, For My Sister the Serial Killer. I loved that this page has a bit of texture with those kind of swatches of fabric. And the lottery, wait a minute, did I say My Sister the Serial Killer was my favourite book of the month? Maybe I need to change that to the lottery. And then finally, ending on such a disappointing end with Maeve fly. I'm so sorry. But I did like how the spread turned out. I liked the colours and themes of like blood and blood splatter and kind of like gothic kind of gory horror. Fit right in. Yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts on any of those books that I've reviewed this month. If you've read them, let me know what your thoughts are. If you're wanting to read them, please let me know if you're adding them to your TBR. But mostly thank you for being here for this book review today, or this book journal setup today. It's been lovely having you here along with me for the ride, and take really gentle care out there, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!